How many of you watched and enjoy the show Friends? Anybody? I loved that show growing up. I thought it was so much fun. And I know content-wise probably isn't like the best, but it was before I knew Jesus, so calm down. All right, so this morning I am super excited to share with you guys just some things that have been on my heart in the realm of relationships and friendships. A little bit later, as part of my message, I'm going to be inviting a friend up, which is why we have the table and the chairs, so just so you're not sitting there ADHD like, why are there two chairs? That's why. All right, but Friends as a show, one of the things that I really loved about that as I was growing up and as I watched that with my family is like just the connection, this deep connection and friendship that they had. And as I was thinking about this topic of friendships and relationships, even though the content of the show isn't necessarily great, the premise and this idea of having people in your life day in and day out that are there to support you, that know the ins and outs of your life is so crucial to us having a fulfilled and abundant life, the life that God has for us. And so friendships are really one of the most core and important aspects of our lives after our faith and our relationship with God. We all desire to be known. We all desire to know others, to have friendships. We desire to be loved, to be noticed, to have purpose and direction in life. And so when I think about friendships, first, obviously, is my relationship with God. Like that is a core piece of my life, if you know me. Secondly, my relationship and friendship with my wife is insanely important to me. And then after that, one of the first people that comes to mind when I'm thinking about my friends is my friend Josh Taylor. I met Josh in the first couple years of college. We lived together. We did ministry together. We've done a mission trip together. Like we were best men in each other's weddings. We have spent loads and loads of time together. I remember one time I was at the mall and I saw Josh and I was super excited. So I ran up and I jumped on his back. It wasn't Josh. I don't get embarrassed easily. That was one of those moments. I did not know what to say. It was super awkward. Oh my goodness. Why do I share that? Well, because it's funny, first of all. And second, you should have friends in your life that you get that excited to see, like that you're willing to just run and jump on them. It's super fun. So today I want to talk to you about the significance of relationships and friendships in our lives, what that looks like. And there's a few different layers to that. So when we look scripturally at the different relationships or friendships we're supposed to have, I noticed 5 really key components or areas that we should have relationships in. One, first and foremost, is our relationship with God. That has to and should be first in our life. Second is family. And so whether that's your biological family or if you're married with your wife, if you have kids, your relationships with your kids, so all things family. Third would be relationships with friends. Fourth would be your community, and fifth would be into the world. And I think all of us have a role to play in all 5 of those areas. Not all of us are called to be overseas missionaries long term, but I think we all have a role to play in supporting missionaries overseas long term. And our church does a wonderful job doing that. You and I, we are created to be in relationship with God, to trust him, to trust his will for our lives, his ways, to obey what he calls us to do. And we then are called to invest and develop relationships with our spouses, with our children, if that's the stage of life you find yourself in, grandchildren maybe. We're called to have friendships with other people. We're called to have a level of relationship or friendship with our community and into the world. We have to keep those 5 in play. I think sometimes we all can struggle to invest in certain areas, certain friendship areas at different times of life. Sometimes we fail to adequately invest in them. And the reality is when we don't invest adequately in all 5 of these areas, we are missing out on something important that God has for us. Enlightening us to see things the way that he sees them, to see people the way that he sees people. And so I don't know about you, but I don't want to miss out on that. I don't want to miss what God has for you and for me. We could talk a lot today about relationship with God. We could talk a lot today about relationship with families. I could talk all dang day about missions, but I won't today. Maybe next time. I really do think that you all, if you haven't, should consider going on a short-term missions trip. I think it is crucial and really impactful for the life of a believer to go and get out of their comfort zone and to go to a place that they don't know the language and to serve the Lord and to have to trust him with that. I think it can be really beneficial. But today, I want to focus in on our relationships with our friends and with our community. The first part of this equation is the friendships that we surround ourselves with. So we see in Proverbs 13:20, it says, whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. It's pretty straightforward. That's the thing I like about Proverbs is it doesn't take a whole lot of thinking to understand. Like, it is what it is. Walk with wise people, you become more wise. Walk with fools, you become more foolish. All right. Kind of ironic how the Bible talks about all of this and tells us how these things affect our lives. Whoever walks with the wise will become wise. What does it mean to walk with the wise? Well, it means to have friendship with, to talk with, to spend time with, to invest in a friendship with. So whoever spends time with, talks with, lives life with the wise becomes more wise, it tells us. And whoever becomes the companion of fools will suffer harm. So I think it's important for us to evaluate our friendship life. And the way that I often do that with myself, and particularly because I spend a lot of time with our teenagers, with our teens, I ask two main questions. What kind of influence are your friends in your life currently? Are they leading you towards Jesus? Are they leading you towards wise decisions? Are they leading you into the things that God has gifted you in? And if not, then there might be reason to reevaluate those friendships. Second question that I like to ask is, what kind of influence are you to your friends? And to be really introspective enough and honest enough to have that conversation to think through, how am I influencing those around me? How am I encouraging them towards Jesus or maybe even away from Jesus by the things that I say, the things that I do, the ways that I invest my time and my resources? These two questions are really important for us as we evaluate our life and our friendships with others. Jesus led by example on this really well. And in like pastoral circles, we talk a lot about this as the 3-12-72 like idea or model. So Jesus in his life had a group of 3 that he spent intentional, significant time with. Does anyone know their names? Peter, James, and John. Jeff's got it. Peter, James, and John. Now, we often talk about the 12 disciples, but Jesus spent extra and very intentional time with 3 of the 12. Now, he wasn't playing favorites per se, but there's a reality that you only have so much to invest in friendships. And so you can't be, unfortunately, for me, best friends with everybody. Like, I would love that, but I can't because I don't have that much time, right? So Jesus led by example. He said, okay, like we need to be intentional with friendship. So how do we do that? I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna have very deep, in-depth, crazy close relationship with 3. And then beyond that, I'm gonna have really good, pretty in-depth relationship with 12. And then there's 72 that I spend some time with. I help teach and guide them a bit, but we don't get a lot of face-to-face time together. And then beyond that, there's just the crowds of people that I don't really know. And so Jesus set this example. These 3 had a really unique friendship with Jesus. They got to see different aspects of his life and experience different things that the other disciples did not get to witness or see. Now, for you and I, out of all of your friends, if you were to think about the people that you know, generally speaking, you probably have a couple of those out of that group that you spend more time with than others. And that's natural. It's not a bad thing. And those are kind of your 3. They're your BFFFR, your best friends forever, for real. And it's great. Like, we need to have these close relationships. And yes, married people and introverts in the room, you need other friendships besides your spouse. Let me just tell you, it's important. I know it can be hard, but it is needed in your life. This core group has the most impact in the way that you think, in the things you invest in the way that you speak, more than anything else in your life. And so we have to make sure that we have the right people who are there when we need a good kick in the pants. When we are doing things that we shouldn't be doing, we should have friends that are willing to call us out. For example, my friend Josh, I know whenever I come to him and I'm like, man, this thing is going on in my life and I'm not really sure what to do with this, his first question every single time, have you prayed about it? Well, no, but that's what I'm talking to you. And he's like, well, I'm not God. Like, go talk to God about it. And then I'll talk to you because God has better answers. And so I have friends in my life, Josh being one of them, my wife being one of them. Our staff helps in this way, like where we keep each other accountable and we challenge one another to be closer to God. Proverbs 24:26 says this, an honest answer is the sign of true friendship, because only someone who deeply loves you, who knows you, will take the time to have a conversation with you and challenge when needed or to encourage when needed. And so an honest answer is really a sign of love when someone comes to you to challenge or to call you out on something that may not be in line with what God is calling you to. And so beyond that 3 close-knit, tight-knit circle that we ought to have in our life, there's the 12. We should have other friendships outside of the 3 that we see from time to time that we catch up with periodically, people we love, people we care about. Beyond the 3 and the 12 is the 72. And so beyond those friends that we spend time with, we are called to more. We are called to, this is where I think it ties in a lot with what Bart was just sharing, this community that we operate and are part of that we call church, right? We come, we gather together. There's all these different ways to serve and to help further the mission of God and the gospel of Jesus Christ to others, but that doesn't necessarily happen on its own. There has to be people in place to walk out what God is calling us to walk out. And it's really fascinating, but beneath our conscious awareness, our brain is constantly picking up cues from the people and environments around us. And we tend to mimic or match what we are around. And then as we do that more and more and more, it creates habits and patterns in our brain and in our lives. And so the people we spend the most significant time around end up affecting the thought patterns that drive our habits and drive our investments and drive our life. So we must be intentional on who is part of that group. And we must be intentional to be involved beyond that group in other ways in the community. In Proverbs, we see it written this way. Proverbs 3:27 says, do not withhold good from those who need it when you have the ability to help. David Bickley, I remember when I was serving with him at Life Center, would often say, see a need, fill a need. If you see somebody's in need, fill the need. If you're there and you have what resources are needed to fill. It could be as simple as opening the door for somebody with a cane. It could be as simple as saying hello to somebody who looks down and telling them to have a nice day. Proverbs 14:21 says, the one who despises his neighbor sins, but whoever is kind to the needy is blessed. So we are called and commanded to not withhold good from those who need it when we have the ability to help. And so then we have to ask, what is it? What good do I have to offer? What good do I have that I could give? It's a bit of a trick question because really, as a person on your own, you really don't have much to give that's good. The Bible tells us that. It tells us that nothing is good outside of Christ. And so it is only God in us and with us and through us that has a good impact in our world and in our relationships. It takes surrendering our life to him and living out obediently the things that he calls us to. And because we have a relationship with God, we do have something incredibly significant to offer. With God in our lives, we have Jesus. We have the Holy Spirit of God who will, if we allow him, encourage and direct us to connect with people, to give an encouraging word to somebody who needs it. You don't have to have all the finances or resources to be able to help people. It can be at such simple thing as just encouraging someone with a have a great day, have a blessed day. I hope your day goes well. It doesn't take much to encourage those around us. In Romans, this is one of my favorite passages, and it says this, for everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. And everyone in church loves to stop there and amen, that is so good. Yes, anybody who comes to God and professes faith will be saved. There's confidence there, it's wonderful. But then the question is, who will give them that opportunity? who will bring the message of God to them. Because if we continue reading in verse 14, it says, but how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him? And how can they believe in him if they have never heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless somebody tells them? And how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? That is why the scriptures say, how beautiful are the feet of messengers who bring the good news. You and I, according to the scriptures, are the messengers who bring the good news. We get to be the light of Jesus in this community and beyond. So no matter what your financial situation, no matter your life struggles, your personality type, your norms, or your perspectives, every one of us can help in one way or another. We all have the capacity to give back and fulfill God's calling in our lives. And so it's never a question of, are you comfortable doing this? It's a question of, is God asking you to do this? And so to prayerfully consider, God, what are you asking me to do? How are you asking me to be involved? And then to say yes. I remember Gideon in the scriptures. The story of Gideon is incredible. God asked him to go to battle against the enemies of Israel. And Gideon has an amazing army, and God tells him to whittle it down and down and down to the point where they're outnumbered 450 to 1. And then he says, and also leave your weapons behind and instead take a clay pot and a horn. How many of you are signing up for that battle? I'm like, what? But we have to remember that God doesn't work the way the world works, and he doesn't operate the way the world operates. So I want to share with you briefly a comparison of statements that I've heard from church people throughout my life and my experience with missions and also trying to serve in different ways in our community. I think sometimes it's easier mentally to go somewhere else to do the work of God in comparison to staying and doing the work of God. I know I struggle with that. Honestly, I would much rather be in another country right now doing mission work. Like, I just have a heart for that. I love that. I would much rather be doing that. But God has called me to stay. And it's harder for me. And that's not the case for everyone. But for me, that's the case. It's like, it is harder for me to stay here and to do what I'm doing than it is to like leave and go somewhere else. I love doing mission work overseas. And so as I've done that and I've had these different experiences, it's just interesting the way that people talk about missions overseas versus missions local. And sometimes there's such a stark comparison that just, it honestly like is amazing and kind of drives me nuts a little bit. And I think sometimes I've had to process this. And even I know early in my walk with Jesus, I had to have a big perspective shift on this. But I remember I've gone to Honduras 3 different times. And I've gotten to do some work in the slums just outside of San Pedro Sula, which is the 2nd largest city in the country. And coming back and sharing pictures, I'm gonna have a couple up here on the screen, people would say things like, that's so amazing to do the work of God in a place that really needs it. Wow, I bet that was an unbelievable and life-changing experience. I've had people say, I wanna go on a mission trip Sunday. I think it would be really impactful in my life. In comparison to conversations about serving in our community, more locally, these are more often the comments that I hear. Oh, I could never get involved with this. A lot of times youth, because I'm the youth pastor and I talk to people about that. It's just so outside of my comfort zone. This upcoming generation is just so far gone, there's no way we can have an impact. I don't want to go there. That sounds dangerous with all of the homeless people and the drugs. Me, share my faith? I don't know enough about the Bible to do that. So I just wonder, why is there such a stark difference in our perspective and our mindset often about this overseas missions? I feel like we've kind of idolized and made it sound like this amazing, wonderful thing. So let me say something really profound right now. Wherever you are, there you are. We get this idea that if we go somewhere to do the work of God, that somehow magically, like I'm just gonna have all the right words to say and the Spirit is gonna move mightily through my life. But the truth is, no matter where you are, there you are. You don't magically change without surrendering yourself to God and asking Him to be the one to create change in your life. And that starts today. It starts every day. if we want to be able to have an impact for the Lord, well, first off, we have to get over being comfortable because that's not what he calls us to. In fact, I would say if you want to follow Jesus wholeheartedly, you should get real comfortable being uncomfortable. He has called me outside of my comfort zone so many times. And so we have to evaluate our perspective. And again, part of this is who we are around and who we choose to surround ourselves with. But it's not according to my fear. It's not according to my perspectives or appearances. It's not according to the news. It's not according to people or what I am comfortable with. It is all according to God and the Word of God. And so we have to compare it back to this. We have to submit our fears, perspectives, and all of these other things to him to allow him to reframe our thinking so that it can be in line with what he is calling us to do and so that we can get to know what his voice sounds like. Now, should we be reckless and go into a space where it is dangerous for you to be? Well, no, unless God's telling you to, like balance, but probably not, right? Like, just like in Spokane, I'm probably not gonna go downtown at 10 p.m. and walk down an alleyway by myself. In Honduras, I'm not gonna go downtown at 10 p.m. and walk down an alley by myself. Like, it doesn't matter where you are. Like, danger is literally everywhere. So we have to be smart and intentional about how we interact and how we engage, right? So Jesus never said this: wait for the lost to come to the church so that they might hear the gospel message and be saved. Not what the Bible says. He says, you, do you call me Lord? Do you believe in me? Do you trust me? Then go as you go in life and make disciples. He doesn't say to have a Bible degree. He doesn't say to go to church for 2 years and 1 month and 3 days, and then you can start sharing the gospel with people. He just says, if you believe in me, your job is to get involved and to have friendships where you are encouraging others towards Christ and where you're being encouraged towards Christ, to be involved in your community where you are helping others find the love of Christ and the light of Christ. So, you and I, we are people. Pastors, shocking, we're people. Teachers, they're people. Broken people, still people. Homeless people, still people. Drug addicts, still people. At the end of the day, the truth is, and the Bible teaches, that every single one of us needs to be loved and needs Jesus. So you and I need to be loved, and you and I need Jesus. Teachers need to be loved. Teachers need Jesus. Broken people, homeless people, struggling people, addicted people, all of the people need to be loved and need Jesus. Will it be uncomfortable for you to go into an area that you have not historically gone? Yup. But is it worth it? I can say emphatically, yes. The last thing I wanted to do with my life was be a pastor, especially for junior hires. Do you want to know who my favorite people are now? Junior hires. Why? Because, David Bickley and Jesus Bush attacked me and drug me in and, no, I'm kidding, but kind of. But I put myself out there obeying what God asked me to do in an area that I didn't want to be, that was the last place that I desired, and God moved so mightily in my life that it completely shifted my perspective. And now the very thing that I despised in a lot of ways and really didn't want to do is the very thing that now I adore. And so sometimes we need to step into the places that make us the most uncomfortable in order for God to work in the greatest of ways. So to unpack this a little bit more and to share with just our last little bit of time here, I want to shift gears a little bit and invite my friend up in a moment. My friend has an incredible story. He's a massive inspiration for me and thousands of people in the Spokane community at large. His name's Rick Clark. He began doing some nonprofit work, and then when quarantine hit with COVID, he began this group on Facebook that is called Spokane Quarantine. So trying to team up with people during the quarantine. And it started small, trying to meet needs of people in the community. And it has grown and grown to where there are now thousands of people who are on this path together, who are Christian and non-Christian and other belief systems, but they are attracted to this movement. And he says this all the time, light attracts light. This, as a believer, and it's anchored in Christian values, but it is bringing all of these people who probably would never sit in a room together, and they're doing the work of God without even necessarily knowing they're doing the work of God. It's absolutely incredible. And so he has had an incredible impact in our community. He has, through that, raised and given thousands upon thousands of dollars to help those in need, to help sustain restaurants that are locally owned and small, to help people in the middle of the heat waves of the summer to have AC or a fan. And he has done so much. And so I'm excited to have him with us this morning to share a little bit of his story and a little bit about just the different things going on in the community. And my hope is that this will inspire you to be obedient to what God is asking you to do here and out there. So would you join me in welcoming Rick Clark up to the stage with me?
Oh,
Thank
good
you.
job.
Thanks for being here, man.
Is this thing working okay? All right.
There we go.
It's like strapped to my head.
Yeah, so we're just gonna work through a few questions. I'm gonna have him share a little bit about his story and what he's done. And I really, really, again, hope it's inspiring to you. But to start off, Rick, can you just share some of your story, your life story, and how you've kind of gotten to be where you are?
Yeah, my name is Rick Clark. I'm the founder and executive director of a local nonprofit called Giving Backpacks. After spending over 4 decades in poverty right here in Spokane, I was born and raised into a home without a father, and kind of no different than a lot of stories. But what it did was it led me to dropping out of school. Everybody in my family dropped out of school. With poverty comes a lot of other things, right? So there's drug addiction, there's domestic violence, there's mental health instabilities, homelessness. I experienced all of those things, and then the cycle just repeated itself. So I started having kids, getting on welfare. Everything was the same, experiencing homelessness. And you fast forward to 2015, which wasn't too long ago, and I'm basically squatting in a trailer at Medical Lake. I owe 3 or 4 months rent. My electricity's been shut off. I don't have a car. I don't have a job. My marriage is on the rocks. And as much as I would love to sit here today and tell you that that was the first time I'd experienced that much struggle, that's the life of poverty. So that was no different than many other times in life. And so I reached a point in March of 2015 where I started questioning if I was really made for this world. I was getting older, and I didn't think there was anything left for me to give, and I didn't feel like I had given anything. I felt like I was a burden on society. And so God met me on that day. I decided to go into town after being a high school dropout for 28 years. I was going to go to Spokane Community College and see if there's any way that I could go back to school, even though I hadn't opened a book in 30 years. And God introduced me to a homeless man halfway through that journey on that day who was experiencing a little bit more pain than I was, which I didn't think was possible. And it was the first time in my life that I ever put all of the stuff I was dealing with aside, and I helped someone who was struggling more than I was. And he had just been robbed of his backpack, and so I did what I could to try to fill that backpack, even though I had nothing, you guys. I literally had nothing. But I went home and I got online and I got some friends to fill 25 backpacks that first 24 hours, and that was 7,000 backpacks ago. We've been handing out backpacks for 7 years downtown, and I went on that day to register for college, and I went through 2 years at SCC and graduated, and then I got a wonderful scholarship at Gonzaga University, and I graduated a couple of years ago from Gonzaga University with, yeah, thank you. But that day in March, you know, God has funny ways of talking to you, and a lot of times I don't share with people. It's just that thing between me and him where I'm like, I got you. Well, today in the songs this morning, I heard, I was breathing, but I was not alive. Do you guys remember that song? That's exactly where I was in March. I was breathing, but I wasn't alive. And I really, you guys don't realize how close I was to not being here anymore. And that man, Jared, changed my life. That homeless man named Jared completely changed my life. Every day since I met him has been better than the day before. Mike Rowe, some of you guys know that guy. He came to Spokane and paid off my tuition at Gonzaga to surprise me. It's a long story. I have a TED Talk out there, so if you want to learn more about it, I know that we don't have a lot of time, but that's kind of where we're at. And then the pandemic came, and that's how Spokane Quarantine started. So
yeah, my family started following when that Spokane Quarantine page started, and they would do like trips out to certain communities. Like they did one to Cheney to go and just shop at some of these little local spots to make sure that those businesses would stay afloat. And again, like they gathered money and gave out AC units and fans during the heat wave last summer. And it's been encouragement to our family getting to participate and join a bunch of other people in just serving. And it started some really cool conversations with our kids on the importance of that and what does the Bible say about serving your community and helping other people in need. And so it's been really, really wonderful.
Yeah, when the pandemic came to town, we couldn't go out and do the outreach work that we were doing. So my wife's like, you can't just pace the house 24 hours a day. Like, you got to figure something out. So I got online and I hosted a 15-minute live video, and I was trying to raise $2,000 to buy 20 pizzas from Pizzerita to support them, because restaurants were really starting to struggle. And then we'd have those pizzas delivered to homeless shelters. I thought, well, that's a good way for all of us to stay safe at home, still help people, right? So to make a long story short, we raised $250,000 in 112 videos, and we literally helped save 187 restaurants during the pandemic. So that's Spokane Quarantine.
Super cool. Super cool. Could you share a little bit about what life was like when you were homeless and just like the difference in how people treated you then versus now?
So, funny story, one of the restaurants that I was asked to leave several years ago because I was homeless and I was staying in the restaurant too long. I was refilling my soda when you weren't probably supposed to, but I was trying to survive, right? One of those restaurants is one of the restaurants that we helped save this, a couple years ago. And I never, I didn't tell them who I was, but it kind of gives you that, that full circle thing where, we were able to pull a whole bunch of people together. But being homeless, it was just a feeling of not connecting with the community. And I felt that anybody who looked at me knew all of my troubles, knew all of my issues. And so I would just bury myself further inside of myself. I didn't want to ask anybody for money. I wasn't out there with signs or anything like that, because I just buried myself within myself because I was embarrassed. And so it was just a lot of just feeling less than. It's a long story as to how I felt about going to Gonzaga, because that was a life I never would have imagined going to Gonzaga University. I laughed and said I might as well apply for Yale or Harvard while I'm at it, because to me that was just so far out of what I was capable of and what I deserve. But God has been showing me over and over again that I deserve everything that anybody else has.
Yeah. What has made the most significant impact in your life as you made changes and chose to seek help?
The biggest impact?
Yeah.
Just watching a community come together, realizing that I'm not in this alone, and being able to, that light attracts light. When people see stuff happening, they want to come around and see what's going on. And then when you show them, then their light comes on, and then stuff starts to ripple effect out there. And I don't think we're all supposed to know how we affect people. Like, you might help somebody. I don't think you're supposed to always know every detail of how that works out. And Spokane Quarantine is now 34,000 people. We raised $82,000 in 14 days to help kids eat last summer. We just recently, last week, raised $20,000 in 3 days to help put brand new clothes on kids that are living in their cars with their families. So the impact is just watching a community get it and say, okay, I feel safe enough to join you, and this isn't going to destroy me. I'm not going to get attacked. I can actually help the community in a way that I haven't heard about on the news, and that's been really, really important.
Yeah, that's cool. What, if anything specific, led you to start the Spokane Quarantine? I know you had already established handing out backpacks. Was there anything else that kind of led to Spokane Quarantine's formation?
The pandemic. That was literally, it just came out of one of those weird, it was like the perfect recipe for a community to either stay in their basement and be scared, or come out and still have to stay home, but maybe be in the living room and not be scared, right? So our mission was to share as much love and positivity as we can, because you guys know there's enough out there to keep you busy for a lifetime of the negative stuff. And we weren't posting positive stuff to try to convince people that we were living this great life. We were posting positive stuff because I believe that there needs to be a balance. If it's fair for all of the people to post the negative, I think it's fair for us to go out there and post the positive, right?
That's good.
So that's exactly what we've done.
I love it. Did you face any opposition to starting Spokane Quarantine?
That's funny. Again, a global pandemic. I'd call that an opposition, right? And the fact that we laughed in its face and said, "That's fine. It's kind of scary for a minute, but guess what? We're going to do this." And so, because of that, there hasn't been opposition, and I think that's been God's main message: is I'm more powerful than you think. Not me. God is more powerful than anybody can even imagine. So, a pandemic can't even stop love, you guys.
Yeah, that's super good. So, as I hear you talk, and we met and talked a little bit beforehand, you make it sound very easy, right? Am I right? Like, it's just like, oh, I just did this.
Real quick, because I had a blast at GU with 7,000 20-year-olds, and I was the only 44-year-old man there that wasn't a janitor or a teacher. My wife decided to go back to college, and she finished one semester. She hated it. She's like, "You made it sound so fun." But I had fun.
So with that, do you have any ideas on just like practical ways for people to get involved serving the community?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this because the world is scary, and the world, as much as I say everything's lovely and great out there, some of the stuff that's on the news is true. There is scary stuff going on. So you want to be safe. What I would suggest, and honestly, if you want to start at the very beginning, and we're talking about baby steps, the next time you're at a light and there's a guy standing 10 feet from your car door and he has a sign that says he needs help, instead of rolling up your window and pretending like you're playing with the radio, which is what I did for many, many years, roll your window down, shut your radio off, and say hello. I don't know how, that chokes me up because I think we can all say hello, right? Let's all practice. You got it. So you guys are now helpers. Because you'll see a click in their eyes because I went out with some GU students, and for 3 months we studied people that hold the signs on the street corners, and we were with them, and you would not believe the things that get yelled and screamed. Even though we were there in our nice clothes, people were yelling the worst things out of cars. So you can imagine if that's all you hear, when someone says hello, it literally will shock their system, and you'll see it. And when you see that, it changes you as a person. You're like, that's someone's brother, that's someone's father, that's someone's sister. And then you can upgrade to, I like I love your dog, that dog looks adorable. Or how's your day going? You can move from hello to other things. And you can move all the way up to helping get people housed. But let me tell you, there's a lot of stuff that we can get started with, and that's just connecting people and letting them know that they're a human being. They're not a dog on a corner. So that's a good way to just get started.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of other ideas if you guys want to.
I'd love for you to share just other ideas on how to get involved in the community, help people that are in need.
So, one of the great things about Spokane Quarantine is that the demographic of the page is 80% women between the ages of 40 and 60. So it's a lot of women who have written me and said, I've never felt comfortable going out on the streets. I've never really known how to donate my time or money. But I really want to. But the things that you're doing, I really appreciate that because it gives me a feeling that I'm connected. And so we do a lot of really fun, wild things. People are like, where do you get your ideas? And I think it's because I never really grew up, right? So one day, we delivered 1,400 donuts to people who were feeling sad. That was our thing. We were like, hey, if you're struggling with this pandemic and you haven't left your house, we're going to drop off some really cool donuts from this donut shop. And we had 1,400 people sign up, and we had hundreds of people donate their time to go deliver those things. And that's a silly idea, right? That normally wouldn't work, you would think. But in a group of 34,000, when you can mobilize people with good hearts, they'll go do donuts. They'll go deliver donuts. And so I would strongly suggest following the page just because there's so many different ways that you can donate time, money, words, encouragement, write letters to people that need letters written to them. There's a lot of stuff you can do. So it kind of depends on your comfort zone, but we go from hitting the streets to just you donate money and we do great things with it. So everything in between.
Yeah, so. That's awesome. Awesome. Well, to kind of close out, just so you guys know, we as a staff kind of talked about it, and we're giving $500 to Spokane Quarantine just to kind of give a little boost and help them out. There's some cards on the Welcome Center. You can clap. That's good.
Yeah.
There's some cards on the Welcome Center that have a link to the Facebook page. So you can just scan the QR code and it'll take you right there. You can join. And there's also a link to their Venmo if you wanted to give and donate. If you have Venmo, or if you don't, you can download it and then add them. So if you're interested in that, Rick and I will be back at the Welcome Center right here after service. But I'd love to just close in prayer together and close our time. So would you pray with me? Jesus, we just thank you today, God, for your presence with us. God, we thank you so much, God, that no matter where we are, no matter what we're facing, no matter how we're feeling, God, that you have made a promise that you are with us. God, and that beyond that, God, you go before us. And so when you are asking us to do something, Father, we can rest assured that you have and will provide everything needed to accomplish that thing. And so, God, it's not about our qualification, it's not about our comfort, but God, it's your presence with us that allows us and equips us to do all the things that you've asked us to do. God, would you help us to be intentional with our friendships, to evaluate those critically? Would you help us to be intentional in our community? God, that we would go beyond when you call us to, beyond sending in a check, to being the feet on the ground, your face to the people, God, so that they might hear your gospel, your story, and experience your love, Father. Help us be the light that attracts light. Help us to push back the darkness. We love you and we praise you. In your name we pray, amen. Thanks for coming, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and we will see you back here next week.